A helpful way for writing characters. Yeah, so I'm back with more writing tips, folks. Hello, it's been a while since I've given a bit of advice on doing my writing. Now, as I say, I'm not the perfect writer, like who is. Um, I've always got like a lot of feedback, which has always been helpful. A lot of things that I can scratch up on, whether that's like pacing of the overall story or whether that's certain dialogue at times. But one thing I've always got consistently good feedback on from lecturers, from other people's reading my scripts, has always been how different and how diverse my characters are when I write them. Like it sounds really straightforward, but it can be very easy to fall into a trap where like characters can be too similar. Whether that is how they speak, how they behave, or whatever. So again, I'm just going to share another one of my mad, wacky methods uh, to kind of diversify them out a wee bit. Um, Oh, I'm also using a new mic today, by the way. One of my sister's friends was very generous and says, "Oh yeah, I see you're doing this. Here, I have this mic, and you can just plug straight in, and that's you sorted." So it's going to save me a lot of editing time if this works out here, which would be really helpful because I'm a lazy bastard. Um, but yeah, when it comes to when you think of a character, right? Obviously it's very easy to fall into that trap of like you're just writing your script, your story, your novel, whatever it might be, and you're just kind of like doing it on the fly, and your character's just going on these journeys or making these decisions or saying what they're saying. Just you're letting it all flow as you go, and then you bring in other characters, and then they're there to serve their purpose, and they do their thing, and they leave. But it's very easy that they can become very one-dimensional, and there's not a lot of um, depth to them. It's very easy. They just kind of like just do it on the fly and just assume like it's very easy when you're writing. Um, that your character's story obviously begins from when you start your script or your story or your novella, whatever, to finish. That is like their arching story that you're deciding to tell. But unless they're born within your story, their life has still started before that in the world that you've created, like up until the point where the opening scene opens. They still would have had experiences. They still would have had ambitions or whatever before you decided to tell a story from when you did. So again, yeah, let's go back to the drawing board, quite literally. Let's say this is Maggie right now. You could open up your script, for example. It's right, Maggie. And when your story begins, let's say Maggie is 24 years old, okay? 24 years old. She could be that age when you start writing your story. Now, it sounds really obvious, but what that means is that she has lived 24 years of life before that story. So, in order to actually flesh her out and actually get to grips with who Maggie is, it sounds really mad. You almost have to like come up with this whole big backstory in 24 years of life. And then beyond that, like maybe her ambitions and what drives her before you sit down to write from this point forward. So again, it could be anything from um like relationships with her parents. Like does she have a relationship with her parents? Let's say she is close with parents. Okay. Um. Yeah. So she has a good relationship with her parents. Let's say is she in education? Let's say for just the purposes of an example, let's say she is at uni, um, doing a law degree. And you would assume that with that, her ambition in the long term would be to become a lawyer. Um, let's say that is the case. So then you would have to flesh out like, right, why is this? Is there a specific reason why she wants to become a lawyer? Did something happen that we don't know about, that we'll never know about in the story that you're telling, or that we might find out somewhere down the line in the story that you're telling? Um, would have something happened beforehand to kind of spur that decision on why she wants to be a lawyer? So it's all about like when you get to know who they are before you insert them into your story, you're able to diversify them and differentiate them from other characters that you might have in your story. So let's talk about struggles. Like, does she have any vices or any addictions or anything like that? So let's say she doesn't smoke, right? But she enjoys a drink. Let's say she drinks alcohol. Okay. Is she single? Is she in a relationship? What are her preferences in that regard? Let's say she has a boyfriend. Okay. Now she wants to be a lawyer. She wants to do that. Let's say, right, she enjoys a drink. So let's say she has a boyfriend, right? And that's from when your story opens. She has a boyfriend. How are her emotions in that relationship? As like from you open up your story, is it a happy relationship? Are they going through struggles? Whatever way that pendulum swings, whether it's good or bad, explore the reasons as to why. Like, let's say there is a wee bit of bumps in the road. Let's say they're not going that great, right? Let's say before your story starts, they are struggling. That let's say there's a lack of communication, and let's say that there is constant arguments. Okay, arguments. Now, as I say, with all the backstory and all the other stuff you've got in the build up, you've got a fair idea of what kind of person Maggie is. And from that, you'd be able to see how she tackles these situations and why she allows herself to maybe continue to be in a relationship that she's struggling with. Maybe that's why she drinks. We don't. It's all just getting like that because at the end of the day, like, I mean, in fairness, not every story's the same. They might not be human, but for the sake of this example, let's say that she has human. So she has feelings, she has emotions. If you want to make it believable, if you want to make it conceivable, and if you want to make her like an individual, her own character, how does she tackle those? And does she have a plan of exiting out of this relationship, or does she have a plan or sticking with the relationship? So it kind of helps you when you know what kind of person they are to understand when you get to the point where they're interacting with other characters, how they're going to interact, how they're going to speak, how they're going to behave. So let's just introduce another character, right? Let's say this is the boyfriend. Now, I've got an A level on her, as you wouldn't believe, with that fucking Sonic the Hedgehog hairdo. But let's say the boyfriend is called Stanley. Okay, Stanley, right? Now let's just do a similar thing. Maybe he's slightly younger. Maybe let's say he's 22. We'll say. Maybe he has no relationship with his parents. He's not studying. Let's say he doesn't have a job, so unemployed. And maybe he just doesn't have that same level of ambition or that same level of drive or work ethic that Maggie does, for example. And maybe that's where the conflict comes from. Could it go back to the reason, like, why does he not have a relationship with his parents? Why at 22 years of age has he not got a bit more of an oomph about him to like kind of do something with his life? Go to the vices. Let's say he drinks and he also smokes. Now, we like you can always flesh out what Maggie's opinion on smoking is, but at the end of the day, it's that question of why does he smoke? Why does he drink? Um, when did he start smoking? Like again, let's say he's 22 years of age, similar to Maggie. Like he could be 22 when you start telling your story, but there's 22 years of a blank page that you have to fill in mentally as to what age he started smoking, why he started smoking, and if he has intentions, like what his internal thoughts are. So let's say he's dating Maggie, obviously, right? Let's say after a few drinks on him, it can become quite confrontational. Um, yeah, so confrontational, but like, let's get to the bottom of it. Does he love Maggie? Like, that's up to you. But let's say, just for the context of making it a wee bit more complex, let's say he genuinely does love his girlfriend Maggie, all right? Let's say he wants to better himself for her, and he really is struggling just to do that, and he's struggling to, um, with how different he is and how different she is, to make the compromises so that two become one. I don't know, but yeah, it's that case of like, how many times have you watched the TV and you saw two people having a conversation and it just feels like very unnatural and it's all very stoic and like that. And maybe that could be down to acting as opposed to the writing. Who knows? But I always think it's always better to have characters that are individuals because even in life, like no two people are the same. They might have similar interests. I'm sure Maggie and Stanley have similar interests. Um, but they're still very different in their own ways. Like one's got a set path that they're going on, the other one's a bit cloudy and up in the air. And then from then, obviously you can start adding other characters with their own ambitions, with their own lives. But I thought I'd keep it fairly not simple, but do you know what I mean? Just it sounds really obvious when I put it, just to make people different, but it's just an easier way of doing it. I think it's all well and good to start from beginning to end with your story, but um, your story begins from your first page to your last, but your character's stories begin much earlier than that, much earlier than that. To the point where by the time they enter your story, they're people. They're people with their own feelings, emotions, behaviors, and patterns. Um, and it's all about how they navigate dealing with other people with different personalities. Then, one thing I always find helps is like drawn from like real life people that you've met, be it even just one conversation that you've had with someone, or be it like one person that you've met. Take similarities from people that you've met that are kind of diversely different and incorporate them in. Honestly, using personal experience is the most valuable thing when it comes to writing because it's real, it's authentic, it feels believable because it has happened. And yet, taking traits from real people for me, I've always found is helpful. But yeah, once you know how they navigate in their own lives, that's when you put them in the like an actual story with actual conflict, with actual resolution, so to speak. But yeah, it's been a while since I've done a wee bit of writing tips video, so I hope this was helpful. I hope you did enjoy it. But yeah, once again, thanks for the mic, bro. I hope you were able to hear me fine, and I hope you were able to understand this. As I say, I try to simplify it and make it kind of visual, just so you can kind of see what I'm talking about as I say it. Likewise with the last writing tip I did, you don't have to draw out every single character and do that. Do it mentally, just like a mental thing. Maybe even take notes on a notepad for each character. I've always found that's what I would do. Like usually, would just write their name and then just notes about them. But just for a visual aid, I thought I would do that. But yeah, if you are planning on writing, I hope you find this helpful. Good luck with your writing. It's a great way to express yourself. And yeah, if you enjoy seeing my beautiful face, I'm here every day. So I will see you tomorrow. Be sure to subscribe if you enjoyed. Be sure to move on if you didn't. And yeah, thanks folks. Pleasure as always. See you in the next one. Bye.